So I wanted to talk a little bit more about pruning and the bloom season and variety selection here in California. I'm in Zone 10. I'm about 10 miles off the coastline. I get asked often in terms about how to manage the pruning of young mango trees. Now, pruning, gardening, it's a bit of science and a bit of an art form. I don't think there's any one right way or one correct way to do things, but there are some wrong ways to approach things. So this is just my approach on it. I recommend that you guys kind of take what you find useful from from the information I'm about to give you. Just see what works for you. So I'm going to talk about two concepts in plants that you guys may be or may not be familiar with. So in fruit trees and in plants overall, there's something called apical dominance. So apical dominance is usually means there's one central branch, central kind of leader in a tree that leads the vegetative growth on it. So usually it's the more vertical branches you kind of see is that. And what happens is when you remove this kind of central branch that's the leader in vegetative growth for this tree, usually it promotes more growth pattern branching that's more like kind of horizontal or more 45 degrees, kind of branching that's more supportive of fruiting and flowers than of vegetative growth. So with like stone fruits, for example, you have to prune stone fruits here in Southern California. It has such a long growing season. If you don't prune it in just a few years, it's just going to be outgrown, too big, too huge to kind of reach lots of the fruits. So with stone fruits, most people already know, you kind of remove a lot of the vertical growth on that to maintain the height of the tree. So kind of keep that in mind. Like you kind of do that for very vigorous growing plants and trees. Mangoes here in California is not a vigorous growing tree, especially grafted plants. So that's one concept. The other concept is something you've probably already been doing or you've seen. So kind of keep in mind that the taller a tree is, the thicker the trunk gets. So the taller the tree, the thicker the trunk gets. So if in bonsai there's something called a concept called sacrificial branch, and what they're doing in that is they're letting one vertical branch kind of grow to thicken the trunk of it. So, and in your backyard, in your home orchard, you might have already been doing this. I have done this in the past where I had a tree and I am trimming a lot of the lower branches, some of the side branches, and then I'm kind of letting it just kind of grow up vertically, almost like a Christmas tree. And you might be doing this just because of space constraints or just because maybe it's too close to the fence. But just kind of keep in mind, the taller a tree is, usually it leads to a thicker trunk. Okay? So that's the two concepts in pruning that I want you guys to be, hopefully you guys are familiar with, and if not, now you are. Now with that in mind, I'm going to show you guys kind of two growth patterns that you see in this mango tree. So this is a shape. I didn't really plan for this shape, it just kind of happened. I had a lot of dieback last year on this plant. There was absolutely no vegetative growth all year long until the end of the season, and then it started sending out all the shoots from the side. So that's why you see the shape like this. This is not a shape I would prefer on a young mango tree. There's really no kind of central leader to help with the thickening in the trunk. It's more bush-like, but this is something that kind of gets promoted often in Florida, and I think it works really well in Florida just because of how vigorous trees grow there. So you gotta try to maintain the size there. But here in California, you're not gonna end up with a mango tree that looks like a 20-year-old avocado tree. It's not gonna happen, you know. So what happens often in terms of pruning I'm asked about is like tip pruning this, where you're kind of cutting this and getting more and more branches. And my suggestion for that is I don't prefer having all these branches on a young tree. Like all these branches, along with the concept I mentioned to you guys, they also promote each end branch is a potential for flower blooms. And blooms does take up a significant resource on a tree. Even if sometimes it doesn't send any fruit, just having the blooms kind of delays all the vegetative growth on a mango tree. This year was a pretty bad year. For example, we had a very cool winter, but I had some varieties that didn't even put out a vegetative growth, and most of the varieties sent out one vegetative growth for the year. And that's probably due to a lot of the cool weather and a lot of the blooming they went through. So that's why I do not recommend a bush-like kind of approach to mango trees here. I just don't think it works, and I think it's just a bit more detrimental to it, just because our mangoes just don't have that long of a growing season. Keep in mind, here in California, the blooming season for mangoes is pretty long. We're talking about from December to possibly as late as May. So when it's blooming that whole time, what's left is you have maybe 5-6 months of weather for vegetative growth, and then you got another bloom season again. So it's a very short season for vegetative growth. And if you were to even let a mango mature, for example, here in the more coastal area, mangoes don't ripen until October, maybe as late as December, and like this year it's even into January. If you're more inland, you might get some mangoes to ripen in August, but pretty much everything here is late season. So imagine you let a mango bloom and fruit on your tree, and letting the fruit mature. Lots of times you're sacrificing one whole season of vegetative growth. And imagine that on a very young tree like this, a very young, smaller tree, or even just like a tree that's a little bit bigger. That's why, at least here, you want your mango trees to get pretty well established before letting them hold on to fruits till maturity. What I do prefer is something along the line of this. So it's just one central branch that's going up. I'm looking for that to help increase the trunk size and I'm hoping that I just get this one single bloom. Blooming takes up a bunch of resources, and just having only one end tip with a bloom is quite useful, quite helpful in terms of getting the tree to really grow. The other thing is, if I haven't noted this, the first 2 to 3 years, you do not want a mango. You don't want to ripen a mango on a tree this size. You just don't want to. It's very detrimental to the tree. After having a fruit on it, you kind of keep it until it's full size. It hurts the tree quite a bit, and it's going to set it way back in terms of vegetative growth. So you might end up with a stunted tree. It's just not going to do anything for some time. So this is the kind of growth I like. The other thing I would like to add is in terms of variety selections. For California, you want to select the most vigorous varieties here. That means selecting for, say, like planting out a Valencia Pride, which is a vigorous growing tree. That's one of the classic older varieties. A newer variety could be something like Sweet Tart, which is known to grow well here and is pretty fungal resistant in terms of the blooms. You don't want to grow a dwarf variety. It's not gonna survive here. You might be able to keep it in a pot and it might be doing okay in a pot, but with a dwarf variety, you put that thing in the ground, it's not gonna grow, and it's possibly will die in a couple of years. So I hope this video helps you guys out. So thanks for checking in.